So let's just start it on this maybe for a couple, 5 minutes, and then we're gonna off for the day. So privacy protection for microdata. I actually already talked about this a little bit in our first part of today's discussion. So traditional methods, including topcoding that Maggie was recommending earlier or mentioning earlier. So it includes topcoding, but in general, I mean, before that I list here, I think like sort of most intuitive to us, given what we know. So one thing is adding more. Okay? So for example, I want to protect, let's just go with an example of protecting this income record. Let's suppose it's sensitive. In a survey, in addition to the income of the person, we have other demographics. And let's say income is the only sensitive information that we want to protect. Then adding noise can be done through, say, for each record of the income, each record has an income, right? So I just randomly add maybe a randomly drawn noise from a particular normal distribution added to each record. So that's what we mean by adding random or a continuous record. Does that make sense? I mean, I don't want to release the exact number, so I want to add some noise to it. You can determine how you want to add the noise. If you want to do a normal, let's just say it's all centered at 0, so the mean will still be the same as the original income variable. But then with the sigma, if the sigma is large, you're adding larger noise, right? You're going to have more deviation. When sigma is smaller or small, you have smaller noise, so your resultant value of each income will be closer to the truth. So that is what we mean by adding noise. Okay, and topcoding is one way to do it. Earlier, Maggie was mentioning like put a cap at income, so everything about that you don't report it. And that's for extremely high income, but sometimes you want extremely low income, right? So that's what we mean by bottom coding. Okay, and you can just do recoding in general as well. Resampling is a method that, well, if I want to do income, let's say, and I have, let's say, 1,000 observations, and let's say I have the empirical set of the 1,000 income, right? There is like 1,000 different values for income. So maybe resampling is like a way to make sure that I can add some noise to it as well. As I'm talking, I actually don't know exactly. Well, resampling might mean many different things. So to be honest, I don't know exactly what it is now for this context. But I can maybe talk a little bit about data swapping. That's another technique that people like to do. Like I just randomly swap records. In the sense that so for person A and person B, I just randomly determine that I want to swap their income. So their income is swapped. Okay? So that would be a way, if you imagine doing swapping, you can still keep the distribution characteristics of income, right? Because the distribution itself doesn't change. Okay? You're just swapping and changing it. So you're like messing up the link, right? And then that will help you, like say, if I know my demographics, gender, race, and marital status, I can determine it's this person, but then the income was swapped out with somebody else. And then that wouldn't help me to determine what the income is, even if I okay. So good and bad for all of these methods. Adding noise, of course, will in a sense, like affect the distribution of characteristics of the original data, because if you add a lot of noise with large sigma, then you are just like distorting the distribution a lot. Okay? If sigma is smaller or small, then you will adding little noise, so you wouldn't like change the distribution of the characteristics a lot. But the data swapping is an example that you might not change a lot. The data swapping, obviously, you might like change the relationship between income and other variables, right? Maybe there's some correlation, first of all, like in the first place, income and expenditures, for example, they were like line up in the way that is for each observation in the original data. But when you do swapping only for income, then the relationship between the natural correlation for two continuous variables, I just want to do correlation. Then obviously, if I do swapping for income but keep expenditure the same, then that will disturb the relationship between income and expenditure. So those are traditional methods, and I already talked about, okay, so show you an example really quick. So this is a project that I worked on. So in fact, if you want to have access to confidential data to do your project, you can actually apply to do it. And then typically you have to visit the statistical agency who hosts the data. You have to do all of the, like, do all of the training and then make sure that you sworn all of that you will never disclose that in the data. So you have to do it at the statistical agency, or there are some research data centers like scattered around in the US that you might be able to access data. So this is when I was spending my sabbatical at the Bureau of Labor Statistics, where I was working with the Consumer Expenditure Survey, which I think everybody's really going to for 347 for various topics. And so in there, I had access to the confidential data. Okay? So you will see that here, I'm plotting the original, which is the confidential data. Here is for the income variable in red, and then the top-coded version, which is the one that's being released, is in green. Okay? So this is, again, top-coding procedures is done in a very complicated format. I couldn't even tell you what it is. It's not directly just like I chop off every value of oxygen. They have complicated rules how they're doing it. But regardless, if you look at the density plots of these two, the original against the top-coded, you can see that once you're doing top-coding, especially if you look at the x-axis here, I'm looking at those higher family income values, like to the right tail. You can see that the density plots, especially the density plot of the top-coded, starts to deviate a lot from the original. When you're applying like the small values or like lower values, it wouldn't change that. Because most of the top coding, most of them happen. Okay? But once you do that, you can see that you lose the distribution of characteristics of the original data you do top coding. Whereas if you think about using a Bayesian method, if it's good enough, then we might still be able to come back to the shape of the red, but then each record will still have a different value. So that's examples of top coding. And synthetic data approach, I talked about it earlier in the first part, so let me just give you a little bit of the literature and background. It was proposed almost 3 decades by now, and we develop Bayesian statistical models, you simulate data from the models that you estimate to get, pretty much you're just trying to get the posterior predictive distribution, okay? And it is supposed to have a good balance of data utility and disclosure risks. The utility we talk about, you want to preserve the relationships in the data as much as you can. So if the model is good enough, you should be able to do it. And then disclosure risk, we talk about it, and then typically synthetic data will have low disclosure risk. And last part I didn't get the chance to talk about earlier is allow data analysts to make valid inferences for a wide class of analysis. So what we mean by this is, imagine, so earlier Maggie was asking how many Ys should we generate, right? What we are trying to release. So the product usually, so let's say this is the confidential Y, that we say is confidential Y, and for the ACS data is 10,000 by 10. Okay? And earlier I was saying, okay, we can generate, let's say, if we do 1 copy of the synthetic data set, I'm using Y star over here. You're still going to keep the same dimension, right? I'm just replacing, let's say, maybe WAOB, because that's the one that I think is most sensitive. So I use Bayesian methods. I do posterior predictive distribution and doing the simulation to replace the entire column, but I still have a full data set there when I release it. Okay? So imagine when the users have access to synthetic data like this, which has the exact same dimension and all that with the original data, they can do, well, let's say, if they want to do a regression analysis of the, disability status given sex, race, marriage status, and WAOB, they will just run a regression analysis on the synthetic data that they give to them, right? So that's what we mean by, well, it's the same dimension, everybody's still working with the same sort of the setup, so they can do the same thing as what they did before. But of course, we need to make sure that all of the inferences people do on the synthetic data will still be valid. So there are certain rules that we have to follow, which I will cover. But the gist here is, well, the good news is that everybody will still have the same dimension. They want to do, yeah, instead of especially comparing to the table data that I was telling you about, instead of like 10,000 by 3, I was given like the table 1, 2, right? So the gist here is synthetic data approach is giving people, like say everything is the same, you just do the analysis as you usually do. So that's attractiveness. So before we break, let me just show you a couple of results, and then we're gonna end here. So this is the recent work that I did with a collaborator at the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So I won't bother you with all the details of what we did with the model and all that, but it was this consumer expenditure. Okay, and we're trying to protect income. And we're trying to design a Bayesian synthesizer or synthesis model to estimate the income and then generate synthetic version. So one way to look at utility is things like the tables that I'm showing on the screen right now. I can look at the, say, the first table on the top is the mean family income in the data and in the synthesizer, or in the synthetic data. Okay? So I can look at its estimate, point estimate. I can also look at its 95% confidence interval in this case. Okay? So I can do that. I can see how close they are to certain ways. It can be a little bit ad hoc, as you can see, but it depends on the problem you work with. You might come up with different ways of that. So this is, you can do the mean, the median, other quantile. And lastly, down here, you can also run regression analysis on the original data and on the synthetic data and check how close they are. So this is typically, and I expect you all to do in your project along the way, is that whenever you design your synthesizer, you apply it to the data, and you generate synthetic data, you want to check how good they are. And one aspect of how good they are is high utility. And you can come up with all kinds of utility measures that you want, and you can produce them and then make sure that you're doing well. And like I said earlier, the other thing about how good those synthetic data are is disclosure risks. We want to have low disclosure risks once we do synthetic data. Okay, so this is another example. It's from the same work. That don't worry about like what they are exactly, but I'm showing you 4 different violin plots. What they are in general is that on the on the y-axis is identification risk that we evaluate. Okay, and in particular for this project, we define. I will talk to you more about this after we get there. We define the identification disclosure risk to be a probability, and we like bound it between 0 and 1. Okay, and we claim that the higher the identification risk, or higher the value is, the higher the risk. Okay, so that's how you can read this plot. This one is about the data, and that's just evaluating the risk on the original data. Super high. So you see the bulk of this is on the top. Okay, only a few records. And this is the synthesizer that we developed. Okay, you can see that the whole thing is being shrunk down. Okay, and this is another method we proposed. You don't have to worry about this, but as a comparison, we plot what topcoding would look like. And the risk is super high. And I should just mention, for the CE data, only 6% of data or observations are being topcoded. 94 never change. Okay, so that is why many records are still having very high risk because they never change. Okay, whereas you can see that this one is bigger than this one because 60% of them being topcoded, so you're able to give more protection for those. Okay, so that's the gist. So don't worry much about the detail. And I think I will just end here. And so, all right, so I'll be in touch. And what we'll do, so first of all, I might check if, I guess, longitude can be used. Do you prefer it here or going back to that room? Probably doesn't matter, I guess. Okay. Yeah, okay. So maybe I'm fine staying here, but I just want to make sure that maybe starting from next week, we meet like 5 minutes late, like 3:15 to 5:15, if that is okay with you, just because I have to run around. And I said, just maybe make sure, yeah, I just realized as I was drawing on the screen, like the the slides that you couldn't see what I was doing. But anyway, I will share the videos, and maybe you make sure that you can install Zoom again so you can see the screen.
Yeah,
All right.
that's on my docket.
Okay.